Do you think, I don't know, I guess I just think I was thinking about that too, like it's interesting how consumer driven we are now, that like because of digital, I assume that I can go on the internet and I can download my favorite song or a new song by my favorite artist.
You're entitled to it, not just assuming that you can. You're entitled to it.
And they should have a song up at least once a week. And they should always be putting out new material. Do you think that you feel any of that pressure, or do you just detach from that idea of just producing for
There are people in the past that I've known that have claimed that they write a song a day. Chances are, if I'm writing a song today, I'm not like thinking about the song I wrote yesterday that I might be able to improve today if I like revisit it. I think, ultimately, such as there is a conflict between absolute freedom and absolute security, there is a conflict between, quantity and quality. I can write a song a day. I don't believe in it. I conform to a pace where, there's 4-verse songs on the forthcoming record that I wrote 50 verses for, so that I could pick exactly what was saying, so I could pick the verses that were saying exactly what I wanted the song to say. And, if that was driven by the calendar, I would have written the 4 verses and then thought, well, do I need a bridge? No, I'm in a hurry.
So
don't have time to write a bridge.
Has that changed at all since you started writing music? Has the songwriting process gotten more elaborate, or has it always been the same kind of a long, drawn-out process to make sure the songs are good?
Well, with me, I love being in the studio, and I've always sought out, economically realistic situations in the studio. I learned with the first version of Last Days in Pompeii that it's bad to have things like a finite record budget, because you end up spending exactly that, or the work should be continued until the artist honestly thinks that it is complete, and that's mostly what guides me. Now, working on the last record, there was a reality where at first the record was a little shorter than what is usually released as a full-length album. And I did deliberately make an effort to go in and, record a couple things so that, the length of the album represented a good value for the purchaser. And that's one of those, sometimes quantity is quality. If everybody bought only 7-inch singles, they wouldn't be able to afford very much records. They wouldn't be able to afford very much music. So, in that regard, I'm ready to compromise. I compromise in things like that. The compromises I won't make unless I want a digital string section. I will, seek out the real thing, or I don't want to play all the instruments from a keyboard. And, with the multi-tracking reality, I have the advantage, as a lot of artists do, is I can go in and I can record what I am capable of recording, and then leave the rest to people who are qualified to do things like, wail on a lead guitar, or, play a mean tambourine.
I was reading an old interview that you did, it was probably 4 years ago now, and you brought that up, that it's nice to be able to go in and play the parts the way you want them played, and the way you want them played. Is that kind of nice about touring solo too, is like you have control over what's going on with the act?
And the one thing that a a very recent East Coast tour, there was a scam played on me, and I just imagined that if I was traveling with, I kind of thought about different personalities in the past that I'd traveled with. It's like, okay, what would Mr. H do in this predicament, or what would Mr. Merkel do in this situation? And I just thought, it's like, well, I'm glad I didn't do this when this didn't happen to Nova Mob, because there'd be squad cars in the parking lot. And then again, the anytime anything happens on time, it's because I'm traveling solo.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it where people will put the chain on the door and cover themselves up with a pillow, and it's like, I'll get up when I damn well feel like getting up. And as time goes on, I know it would be very difficult to find people that could conform to a group effort, a group mentality. And not only that, but I'm really not convinced that having 3 more people would quadruple the amount of money that the clubs would pay me for the appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are financial aspects to be considered.
Why do you think that musicians develop a sense of entitlement?
I think a lot of people with senses of entitlement become artists.
Okay.
There is an element of I am the creator. I am thusly, like God. Mm-hmm. It sounds ridiculous on the surface, but there are, those threads to it. Not that people in cover bands are, less egotistical, but they settle for, the local groupies and the local beer or whatever. But no, I think generally people that have decided to make themselves dependent upon their creativity rather than their labor and or intelligence, that there's a certain amount of narcissism there in the first place that makes it all happen. If I wasn't off the map as far as egotism was concerned, I wouldn't have done any things that I'm known for.
Going back to talking about the album, did you go into this with a general theme, listening to it and looking at the lyrics? There's a lot of self-reflection, it seems like, but
actual light reflection. Topics dealing with such as you're the reflection of the moon on the water, and there's a song called Charles Hollis Jones, who invented the see-through furniture.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a coincidence that all that was in the content. Narcissus, another reflection, story. Didn't come in there with those ideas, but it's one of those things that it raises its head fairly soon.
Mm-hmm.
You begin noticing, it's like, hey, I'm in the same ballpark as this song, and just without patting myself on the back. That's what talent is supposed to be about, is unconsciously or easily being able to do stuff like that.
Did that when you were making the album and you started noticing all the similar imagery? Were you kind of worried at all about, now I have to follow this theme, or did it
you just either moderate it or add to it. If it's with any record, especially now that people are working with Pro Tools and things like that, where they're not limited to the number of tracks. The number of tracks per song, recording
mm-hmm.
tracks. The most important thing is knowing when something is done.
Uh-huh.